Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another live session of Hands on SAP Dev with me, DJ Q Macro, but of course, as always at the moment, more importantly with Daniel Hutzel. Daniel, say hi.
Hey,
Here he is again. So we're here again, continuing this series, The Art and Science of CAP, and this is part five. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining live. If you're joining live, if you're watching the replay, thanks for also watching the replay. And if you are watching the replay, we always create some sort of notes as well, so we can sort of watch the replay and read the notes at the same time, and they'll have links and other bits and pieces that sort of point to where Daniel has been, what Daniel has been referencing throughout. So first of all, good morning to Leo, a good old friend of mine, Leo Van Hengel in Frankfurt. Aloha to you, Volker, you beautiful person, and Satish. Good morning to you. So keep your chat coming, keep your comments. What Daniel and I love is to hear from you in the chat. It makes it more exciting and interesting for us if you chat, put your comments, put your disagreements, put your questions, and we'll try also to have a little section just before we finish to address any questions that you may have. Victor, good morning to you. Right, so same procedure, just like every year. What I'm going to do is, first of all, share my screen, share full screen, entire screen, share. And I'm going to catch you all up and myself up as well. Why is that share thing right in the middle of the screen? Can I move that? There we go. Perfect. Out of the way. Perfect. So just to let you know, maybe if there's one URL that you want, it's this one. Let me just share that in the chat here as well. That URL has a summary of the parts that we're running through when they were broadcast. There's the link to the either the live stream, which is this one now, or the recording. It's the same URL. These are the YouTube URLs. And then the notes that we've made are linked here. Okay, so in fact, let me just close that one so you can see the navigation. So I'm going to now click on Task Notes Part 4 to catch us up and remind all of us, including me and Daniel, what we talked about last week. Now, let me know in the chat. Daniel also wants to know what you think of this sort of longer version. If you don't like it because it's too long, it's my fault because I sort of did indulge myself because it was just super exciting and super interesting. But anyway, let us know in the chat. So first of all, we had the catch up from the previous one, and we talked very briefly about this slide deck that Daniel clicked on. Of course, it was John McCarthy. VJ spotted it was John McCarthy, and we talked a little bit about partial application and currying. By the way, currying is from Haskell Curry, as is the language Haskell, named after this guy here. How about having two things named, one after your first name, one after your last name? It's bonkers. Anyway, Daniel started around 17 minutes in to look at the getting starting area and turn this phrase, when when all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail, into everything is a service. And Daniel also talked about the adoption of the hexagonal architecture approach and basically sort of underlined the fact that really everything is a service, not just the stuff that you create, but also the CAP framework. Everything in the CAP framework is a service. And the most mind-blowingly simple but important thing that brought that home to me is in the extensible framework section of CAPIA, the documentation, where we have this. So basically, this example is injecting a handler for a before on the DB service. So before anything happens, asterisk, anything, that was just bonkers. And we come back to that a little bit later as well. This this whole approach of how everything is a service really is sort of realized, and the philosophy behind it goes back a little bit to Smalltalk. And there was this does not understand mechanism in Smalltalk, which was basically invoked if a message came in that wasn't recognized. And I sort of volunteered the fact that actually it's quite similar, or Ruby took from that, and that Ruby has a very similar method missing construct. Now, if you're interested in digging more, I've tried to put links to lots of different things. Interestingly, and this will be interesting to Daniel as well, this does not understand link is actually in the C2 wiki, which is lovely, right? Anyway, then Daniel showed us some features of the REPL, the CDS REPL, which is basically built on the Node REPL with, at the moment, two new commands: the .inspect command and the .run command. And in the last week's part, Daniel showed us a little bit of both of those. But before we dove into those, I'm using that as a past participle, we had a look at the CDS facade, and we talked a little bit about lazy loading. Daniel showed us some source code of the CAP framework and showed us how getters can bring about the feature, the advantage of something being only loaded on demand. And I put together a little sort of example here of how a getter can bring about that effect. So I've got a little ASCII enema thing here that shows that. Anyway, have a look at that later. And by the way, I also mentioned it was a bit like a thunk, which is like this calculation that gets passed around and not evaluated until its result really is needed, which goes back to algol, right? Which I think we mentioned in a previous part as well. Anyway, Daniel dived into specifically the env and showed how when Daniel looked to the env in the REPL through the CDS sort of main CDS facade, all of a sudden the CDS object grew because the env thing was loaded, right? Okay, next Daniel looked at the .inspect command. This is one of the two commands that Daniel and the team has added to the Node.js REPL, plus also then the run command. And the run command was pretty amazing. Basically, it runs cds.test behind the scenes, but it also exposes, as sort of REPL global values, your entities and also the services. And also when we looked in a previous episode to this at what services existed, we were sort of semi-surprised, quote unquote, surprised to see not only were our services there, catalog service, admin service, user service, but also what the heck is that? The DB service. It's there just as another service, right? Just underlining that whole idea of that everything is a service. And then looking at how queries sort of have the similar property to functions in first-class citizenship taken from functional programming. Queries are first class as well, in that you can create them, you can assign them to variables, you can extend them, you can sort of modify them, and then eventually when you're ready, you can have, you can execute them, you can have them executed by using await. And I put here, it's like, how does that even work? So maybe if you want a session on figuring out how the hell that works, what's going on in the background, maybe it's a topic for another post. Let me know. Okay, going back to the database as a service, going back to the database, which is a service, Daniel injected this sort of console.log, and we talked about the fact that this is just a function reference. I also then take pains to point out that how that example differs to this, because Daniel likes to put spaces in the code to make it more human readable, which is really nice. But it also differs a little bit as well, because of course this thing here, function reference, is the equivalent of this thing here, which is also a function reference, right? It's just a lambda. I think I ramble on about where the phrase lambda came from and everything, and why it's called lambda, and Pythons have got lambda as lambda keyword and everything somewhere in this blog post. Anyway, and then in using it, going back to inspect, Daniel looked at the event handlers for the DB service, and we saw all this sort of stuff here and using the depth too. So of course, you can limit the depth a little bit like the tree command in Unix. Just list a directory hierarchy. You can limit the depth as well. You can limit the depth here, which is really nice. And then basically the sort of the denouement was where Daniel showed well, actually it's in serve dispatch, but at the heart of the service mechanism in the framework, this screenshot here shows everything you need to know about this is the heart of the framework. I think it's fair to say this is the heart of the framework, which is a bit mind-blowing. And then something I've titled Back to the Future. We dwell a little bit on CAP. This quote, CAP is like ABAP for the non-ABAP world, which is wonderful. And then I sort of go off on how wonderful I think the sort of the event-based programming for early ABAP was in R2. Talk about the Verbucher, the update task, and also Daniel pointed out that someone had said, yeah, Excel is the best end user development tool, which I think it is, because even I don't know how many people put in the chat if you're doing Advent of Code, this sort of online code competition that's in December every year. People are doing it in Excel. I mean, what the heck is going on? And I guess finally, the magic is that there is no magic. And this was, I think, the most powerful for me demonstration of A, the simplicity of the framework and the design, but B, also the power of the REPL. So Daniel created a service, and I put in here as well, I think in the footnote, there's millions of footnotes. Daniel, I'm going to ask you now, you can nod or shake your head or whatever. I was thinking, why did Daniel put this in brackets? Was it because you were just intending later to do something like this, serve equals new serve, dot send immediately? I don't know whether that's what is your intention.
Right.
Then of course, you decided to break it down a little bit, obviously, in a more step-by-step wise. Was that the reason?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool. So then you sent a simple request and, of course, got back a promise. But when Daniel was doing this, with a Schnapszahl as well, of course, obviously, when Daniel sent this, I was thinking, what is this foo? But I realized that actually it doesn't matter that I don't know what this foo is. This is a message, and it goes back to the does not understand necessarily, in the same sort of way, as in it doesn't matter what this is. If you have a handler, it'll get handled. So this was basically sent. Nothing came back because there was no handler. So Daniel then defined one for the foo message. I'm going to use the word message because I'm feeling all sort of small talky. And it worked. It was amazing. There we go. And there was, because the actual realization of the handling of that message, as in the function reference that was defined on the serve.on, was just a console.log. So we got that. Okay, which is also quite interesting that, of course, in the on handler, we also get the next. And what I'll put here is this request is essentially and actually an event message. And then finally, Daniel showed us what essentially, I'm going to jump down to the bottom here, what essentially we talk about in the service integration program a lot, which is in the design time, tight loops, especially described in Jumpstart and Grow as you go, in the Cloud Cap samples, which is this sort of, I'd hesitate to call it a monorepo, but it is a monorepo, but that's not the point of it. It's just basically a collection of different CAP services that relate to each other and reference each other. And I think here, this is the reference to the review service from the bookstore service. And because that reference existed, when we start it up, when Daniel did a I've got a reference here, when Daniel did a CDS watch, keyword watch, and watch is a design time command, not a runtime command, as in a production. This is in the development tight loop. It looks to see if anything else is providing that service already. Where does it look? It looks in the cds.cdsservices.json in the user's home directory. And that in itself is a clue that this is a design time only thing. The concept of a user's home directory doesn't exist when you've deployed this to the cloud. So this is, clearly a design time mechanism. And what happens is when we start a second service with CDS Watch reviews in a second window, it starts on 4005 because of course 4004 is taken up. So, +1, etc. Then it writes into this CDS services JSON file the fact that this review service on this URL, which is all the credentials that are needed at the design time, is being provided, and therefore the original first CAP service looks in here, goes, oh, there it is, and then doesn't decide to mock, but says, right, I'm going to connect to it because I do have bindings for it. And it's just like bonkers good. I think it's fantastic. Anyway, there's loads of footnotes. I go into a lot of detail, sorry, Daniel, but about meta programming, and about lambda. Oh, here we go. This is where I talked about lambdas and about the fact that you can have closures. So I've given an example of what a closure is, how a closure works, because you and I am going to be talking about closures, I'm sure, a bit more. So this is a little bit of an intro to what a closure is, and then lots of different things. Look at that. That phrase will be forever embedded in my brain. Dialog, Verbucher, enqueue, batch, message, gateway, and spool. My goodness me, all the different types of work processes. Any R3 architects here? Yes, please. Right, Daniel, that was me with the summary. I hope that was okay. Oh, by the way, as well, I also, in order to recreate what Daniel did in the part four, I want to work with the versions of CAP that you all have externally. So the latest is 8.5.1. And I love containers, so everything I do is in containers. So if you want to do this and want to have it in a container, I've got a CAP 8.5.1 environment. So this is what I did, Docker run, CAP 8.5.1. This is how I build my containers with CAP. I get a node bash shell prompt, and then I can clone the CAP samples, do the npm install, cds REPL, bang, run bookshop, blah, blah, blah. So you can do exactly what Daniel did in part four with no messing about on your machine and in a pure, proper computing environment, i.e. a Unix-based environment. Right, over to you, Daniel.
Thanks, TJ. As always, this is the best part of the whole session. Yeah, it's beautifully summarized and even more detailed than I could add verbally. So regarding today, I think we should continue what we talked about last time, because actually there was a request by the audience. Let's go into some details on parentheses remote services.
Before
And
you carry on, Daniel, are you sharing? I don't
oh,
know where.
not yet, not yet. I will.
Ah, because your video's gone black. There's nothing at all showing. But anyway, if you're going to share your screen, that's fine. Oh, here we go. Right.
Yeah,
Perfect. We can see
and the
the
other
mountain.
question was about that we should go into the anti-patterns, the bad practices. And let's try to do that today. Maybe starting with REPL. Oh, by the way, you see I'm also a developer. Did I mention this? A running test here. Um, yeah, REPL. I added actually after our session this .run command as a command line option as well. So you can just start the REPL and immediately run that project here. Or if you don't specify anything, just dot is the current project. And the other thing, because I use REPL quite frequently to try out features from CDS, like the CDSQL stuff that I just added, which is this one here.
By the way, Daniel, sorry to ask you, could you just
Yeah,
bump up the font to maybe a couple
yeah,
of sizes, please?
yeah.
Thanks.
That we can immediately load it. So basically, that is the same. Then I run here this project and I do something like, hey, I want to play around with the new stuff that I created, which is ref, val, expression, and what else? Expand. And I know that is provided by the CDSQL module. So I can do something like, give me a CQL representation of a reference to foo bar, or give me that one, maybe the same one, just to show the difference as a val, or do an expand of an element called, or a path foobar, which is
Wow.
also a reference, but in addition the star. And there's also this variant. Yeah, because actually when I try to construct CQN objects at runtime or also in a REPL, I also always do mistakes. And I saw this also from a project internally, and therefore I did this. So I want to have foobar, but only, I missed one. Yeah, let's now do this one. So I use this QL stuff. So here we got it. It's doing the very same than what I did the other way. So I want foo bar. And as you might know, CAP CDL has infix filters and so has CQN. So I add an infix filter and in there put a where clause where x less than 9, 11 of course. And I want to order that nested result set, the expanded stuff by car. And what do I want to expand? Well, let's say the reference A and the reference to B and a value, or let's say an expression. A plus B as C. Oops. Where's my, oops, here, a missing tick. And something missing as well.
Close bracket. Yep.
Oh, that has to be provided in a different way. So here's our expand. I refer the element foo bar. I apply these infix filter stuff. I expand these columns. And it's very much, by the way, the same than having a select from. Let's do that now in another way. Foo bar, where infix filter x less than 11. I can also add the where keyword here, by the way, and hopefully it works. Order by car, and I want to expand A and B and A plus B.
What?
And you know, this is the idea of these nested projections of CQL. So two major extensions we made in CQL to SQL. One is the associations and the path expressions, endless long path expressions, not just table alias dot column, but also the nested projection. And the idea of a projection is basically it has a source and you need to point to from your current context. Usually you would add this in the columns clause of a query, and then you have a nested projection. Then you can apply some where clauses and order by clauses, as you know from SQL.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a columns clause. When I do an expand, then we called it expand, and when we do a select, we called it columns. But it's always the same concept. And this concept goes back to relational algebra or relational model projection. So it's really based on some science, very proven science, the relational model.
Well,
Okay,
this is called the art and science of CAP, so that's okay. That's allowed.
you're right, right. Yeah, so that was just about introducing these new options, and the other one is the run. So I want to run my bookshop, which I happen to have here in this sole folder.
Okay. So while you're typing that, I was going to ask, what was that dash U? Is that is a new thing, isn't it? The dash U and the dash R.
Exactly, yeah. U stands for use and R for run.
Gotcha. In
So
the R for REPL. Yeah.
yeah, in the Alpha REPL, of course. Yeah. So now we have REPL started with our bookshop. And now let's jump into the thing that we wanted and didn't finish last time. So we have the bookstore, and you remember the picture that DJ showed with the hexagonal stuff showing that bookshop is a tiny little standalone application, as you know.
Yeah.
Then there's the review service, another tiny little application. Both don't know anything about each other's. So reviews is designed to review whatever. You see this here, by the way, in the code. Samples bookshop, you know, and review service is designed as it has reviews, and the review subject is of that type, and that type is declared as 111, of course, a string, because a string we can put in any kind of primary key of whatever unknown thing that we might want to review. So
Sorry,
it's,
Daniel, maybe a little bit bigger the font,
oh
please.
yeah, sorry, of course.
We should. I think we should. I think we need a new core CDS type called a Schnapps string.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and now, and the bookstore is another application, and call this a composite application or composite project. What it does next to bookshop here, it says, okay, I want to reuse bookshop and reviews and orders, which is another of this independent, like microservice kind of application, and some common content from common and this data viewer technical thing. And I just mesh it up and compose it into something new. Like in here, we refer to our mashup thing, and here we say, okay, this is books, don't know about reviews. This is reviews, don't know about books. So I introduce both to each other. I say, hey, books, you from now on have a composition of many reviews. By the way, aspect-oriented modeling. I reuse something from that package, which I don't own, and in my context of using that thing, I can extend it however I like, right?
Exactly, exactly. I think you also talked about this in the second part when we
Yeah,
talked about mixins, and you had the invoices and orders and this middle team and the core team,
yeah,
and the conflicts were resolved by the fact that you could use aspects.
right, exactly. Okay, so books has reviews now, and reviews, I told reviews what to review by saying, hey, and your review subject should be the book's ID. So both are wired up in a single line of code, and everything works out of the box. That's the idea of CUP. Similar here, I introduce books and orders to each other. I say, hey, orders, your order items, products, references are books. And so your product ID of the order item should be the book ID. So I wired both up. We are thinking of adding some more um, syntactical sugar to do this polymorphic association game and connecting dangling associations to each others. But it works anyways. Yeah, now going back to the story of um, remote services. So I can start the bookstore and I just, oops. Oh yeah, no credentials. Yeah, because I didn't do CDS Watch. So let's do CDS Watch bookstore.
What was it
Yes,
that you
yes.
ran by mistake? It was CDS run, yeah.
Yeah, REPL. And I want to load the bookstore later on in REPL, and therefore I did it. But what Watch does, Watch enables this
Yeah,
serverless game of my in my home
exactly.
directory, the CDSRC thing. And it's only Watch. We could also enable it more, but we decided to have it only on Watch. But yeah,
Yeah, makes sense.
so now it also didn't find the credentials for review service and the order service, but because I'm watching it, it said, okay, I will mock it because I didn't find somebody else.
Yep.
And just also to have this again repeated, and then I go on. Let's start actually two new shells.
You can never have too many shells.
Yeah, exactly. So CDS watch samples reviews and CDS watch samples orders. Likely I get an error message now. Not yet, but I would later on because, no, I configured it by a .env file. By the way, new version has new .env options. It supports CDSRC YAML and also .profile.env, like hybrid.env.
Ah,
Um,
this.
so both services are running now. Let's see what our bookstore, our composite application does now. Well, it found both. The one in port 4005 and the other one in 4006. Now, let's also see that these are really running applications. Here is a chat window. So this one is a review service, and I say, oops. Yeah, I clicked on reviews. Wanted to click only on the whole thing. Better. Okay, there's a review service. It has also a tiny Vue.js UI where I can do some rating to test it. So this should now, yeah, exactly. Here we got um, the new rating. Oops, I should have logged in as Alice. Yeah, I can close this and do it again.
So for those wondering, Alice is the standard user that has I think it has admin rights with no password, right?
Yeah, I'm afraid. So the colleagues are working on on something in the authentication, and I'm afraid they broke it.
You can't get more live and bleeding edge than this. This is
Yeah,
this is where it
exactly.
happens.
Okay, so let's see how far we get. Worst case is, well, let's do it like that. Um, well, later on if we need it.
Cool.
Need it.
And by the way, good morning to everybody who's joined and said good morning. Helmut, good morning to you. Welcome. You're not too late.
So I just switched on privileged mode. You should not do that, by the way. It's my privileged user. Here it is. See whether it is better.
Now that's a different type of hammer.
Still forbidden. Yeah,
Marion just said, always turn on privilege mode. Got it.
exactly. And if you have access to our code, then you can also do something like that, right? Hopefully it works now.
I think the when I write the notes to this session, it's going to take me even longer than it took me to write the notes for the last part.
Oh, cool, works. Event emitted, by the way, and event received. And this is what I want to show, these kind of things. And yeah, the same here. That is a running application. It has, I think this is even a Fiori UI then. Yeah, to manage orders. Fiori is a bit slower than Vue.js sometimes. Just
Just putting it out there.
to mention. Um, Yeah, and of course the last one is like an OEM version or an enhanced version of the bookshop, the bookstore, right? Which
Yes.
meshes up with the other one. So if we open this, we see the bookshop. And by the way, we also forward to these authors uh, because they are included still. This another thing. Yeah, here's a bookstore. And we see, by the way, these stars turned filled because I received a message from the review service, and based on this message, I updated this entry's average rating. So let's do a similar thing on the author one, like maybe that one. Just say it's now 3, and now that one has the average rating of 3.
Ca- Can
So running into different things. Yeah, now let's go back to REPL because REPL is your friend, right? And see what's happening here. Now it should work with this additional. DJ, sorry, did I interrupt you?
No. Well, I was interrupting you, but we were. I think we were all so distracted by this privileged user thing that, well, I certainly was, and I missed the impact of, and maybe you're going to come to this, the sending and the receiving of that message and what appeared in the logs, because I think it's always useful to stare at the logs and become comfortable with what gets spat out of the CAP server logs. So maybe we could take a go back briefly to that once you finish this bit.
Yeah. So I wanted to start it with bindings, but I think the REPL doesn't support this option. In CDS run, we have this option. Um, I need to enable this in REPL as well, as I now use REPL all over the time. Let's check quickly. But that's the last one where I monkey patch our stuff.
Monkey patching for the win.
Okay. That is our poor man's CLI thing. Okay. Now I wanted to double check this. Yeah, here we are. Mm, somewhere here. Yeah. I will check this in then afterwards, so you have it always.
See, where else people in the chat can you get to see live modifications of a fundamental framework at SAP?
Okay, so with bindings is supported, but still something didn't work. So maybe I have to put the with bindings before. Yeah, of course I have to put it before running. Yeah, better now. So again, bindings worked, and I should be connected to the order service now. Maybe something still. Oh, I should have also told it the mocked thing. Let's just do this hard-coded now. As mocked string or options. Don't remember. I have to look it up. Let's try it. No. Okay. Sorry, should have prepared that. What I wanted to show basically is um, yeah, I can't show it in Rebel now. Too bad. Okay, so now then I show something else later on in REPL, but going on with that now. So what we saw here is maybe let's do it like that. I start that one again and click on some reviews.
Hmm.
And it sent out a lot of messages here, but no receiver. And let's see whether we can see where the messages are. Yes, it told us here it started messaging, choosing the file-based messaging, grow as you go, hexagonal architecture, a
Yep.
file-based implementation of that thing as a stand-in for the real, whatever, event hub, event broker, that Kafka that you would use at runtime. And it should ideally, being a good citizen of CUP, tell me where it logs, but it doesn't. But I know where it logs these messages. It should be in oh no, up samples reviews. No, DJ, where does it log?
What are you looking for? The logs for what?
The message box, the file-based one.
Oh, I don't know actually. I've never looked. Hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't tell me. Hmm. Okay, so it logs in a file. And when I start this one again, then I should see some events received because they queued up in this file. And now I have a receiver which subscribed to this event and I get it.
Might it be a file in your home directory, hidden one in your home directory? In the same.
Not really. I think
Oh,
it's
no.
definitely over there
Okay.
somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So that's it. And what I wanted to show now, and now let's back to Rebel. And sorry for this confusion now.
It's all
Again,
good. It's all good.
back.
We're all learning.
Okay. Going back to the this thing here. Let's have service again. A is a new CDS service. And we saw already a service is just an event dispatcher, and you can add handlers to this event dispatcher.
Yep.
So we have this new CDS service, and as you mentioned, the brackets are just for me later on to add more things. And I have another CDS service, and I want to say, hey, on whatever, I want this service B to listen to events of service A, but
Yep.
somehow B needs to register to these events. Okay, let's do like that. I say, hey, A on some event, call B. Yeah, basically this is what B would doing, and this is just B would do something. I would send now an event. Send. Hey,
Uh-huh.
see, there is a message. Oops. And again, yeah, let's have it. Okay. And I want to register, yeah, I want to register another event handler to B, where I say, oops, on whatever, or before whatever,
Hmm.
I want to see what happens. Let's really do I have three major things for events. One is request, the other one is MSG, as you know, and then when I want to have the like the superclass, I call this Eve.
Eve event.
Exactly. Uh, so Eve event and Eve data I want to log.
I think these short three-character variable and constant names are the cap equivalent of the well, I was going to say about the data dictionary
Yeah,
5-character
yeah. And
generally.
Unix times when you have to save memory, right?
Yes, of
Old
course.
Unix times.
All in fact all the usernames as well are 3 characters like DMR Dennis Ritchie and so on.
Right, exactly. Okay, so did we have anything? Let's double check. So A handlers.
You want dot inspect.
Oh, yeah. Handlers. And I think I need two actually. Yeah, we have one handler on some event that should call B, send hey C to B, and I should have two handlers. Oh no, also only the star handler on B. Okay, so hey A send some event. Is something like 11, and we await it to
Hmm.
execute it, right? It's similar to the. Okay, so we get the message, hey C request, which was our console log handler
Yep.
that
Yep.
we added above. With method is some event method because I used send, which goes to REST and HTTP, and we interpret this event name as a method. But you
Ah,
can always access it via event, as we do in our console log handler. And yeah, the data. Um, let's double check. Yeah, if data we logged. That's right. Okay, and I can also emit such a thing. And now I see, hey, it's not
that's a
anymore,
beautiful
but an event
contrast.
message. But it's the very same thing and handled in the very same way, right? And this is what I want to show here. Yeah, that's about what we talk about when we talk about agnostic event processing. The other thing is what I wanted to share when I do something like B on, yeah, let's say B on this one, and I say await B send this event. It logs. B now logs 2 times. And let's add another one. And now log just something like, where's gotcha?
That's because
Here it is.
there it is. Yep.
And that's a tiny thing what people should know. When I send an event, I run the event handlers, including these on event handlers, including the gotcha one. So let's see the gotcha one. No, I have the for handler, and one of these is the gotcha one. The before handlers are all executed in parallel. The after handlers are all executed in parallel. The on handlers are executed in order using the next pattern, which is called the interceptor pattern. And the
Yep.
first one that gets it and doesn't delegate to next consumes that event.
Yes.
And in case of send, this is really an interceptor stack. But in case of emit, we decided, hey, this is an asynchronous message. So all handlers, including the on handlers, are interpreted as just being observers and listeners, not interceptors. And therefore, Gotcha also got called when I admitted this, because now the own handlers for this asynchronous event processing are interpreted like that. And that is a complete story of CAP framework. So we looked at the dispatch thing, and this is the niftiest part maybe, but not that difficult actually. Now, what does a remote handler? Uh, what is a remote handler? So if I would,
Sorry, Daniel, before we go into the remote handler,
yeah,
can you say a little bit something about something you mentioned before, which was the only difference between send and emit, or rather a message, a method and a message
mm,
being handled is, of course, a method expects, or there's an expectation that something is returned, whereas a message, there's no expectation of something to be returned.
exactly.
Is that something can you sort of say a little bit about that in the context of what's in our brains right now, having seen what you've just done?
Yeah. So let's create a new message, which is a CDS event message. Event. I think I called it only. Yeah, exactly. Just for brevity. And let's say this is your event, and this is your data. And compare, well, and compare it with a request of the same kind. Looks pretty much the same, but this
Hmm.
has a class event message and
Yeah.
this has a class event. And when we look in more detail to what it is about, yeah, by the way, REPL is your friend, and you can even connect it to VS Code because there is this nice attached to node process debug option in VS Code. Oops, too many. Likely the last one is exactly got it.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Okay, now let's say how to get access to this. Let's say I just park it in CDS so I can access it from the other side. I could also put a
Yeah.
breakpoint somewhere, but that is maybe easier. Now I should have it here in CDS. That is our request. Yeah, that is just the two-string default. And this is our message. And the main difference you see is basically in the prototype, a request should have much. Basically, the response methods, I don't find it now. Don't
Okay.
know. Yeah. It allows you to reply, right?
Yeah. Okay. In a request.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Like request error. Error is always there, but reply is here. And there's also the notify to collect messages to show in the Fiori toasters, for example. And when we try the same in message, I think it doesn't work. Yeah,
Yeah. There we go. Nice.
isn't a function, right?
Yeah.
And
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel.
debugger worked. Okay. Yeah, remote services. So what is a remote service? Basically, a remote service is something like our B stuff here, or let's, yeah, a new one.
By the way, while you're typing that, I've just realized it's like 8:54. What the heck? So we only have 6 minutes left, but
Oh,
let's look at this. There was actually
yeah.
only one question which we can cover right at the end, but so carry on for now.
Okay. Yeah, so a remote service is actually a service that we create locally, but which happens to be a proxy to whatever a remote thing there is. Like I could create now a service called R for remote and
Mhm.
say whenever something is arriving at your doors, just if in that case, forward it to whatever remote source you have.
Forward.
This is exactly what we do, and this is also what makes, again, this cup thing very agnostic. So, because a remote service is reflected by a cup service locally, which happens to be a proxy, which does basically implement the equivalent of Smalltalk's does not understand method.
Yeah.
It's the star handler in cup and has a generic way to translate incoming requests to target requests. And you go, no, where did we do this? We did do this in a remote or data proxy. We can call remote or
Mhm.
data services generically because we have a standard translation of all these queries, which are CQN objects, by the way.
Yeah.
So, and we translate them. So we get a data request, we translate it to CQN. CQN goes as a query, goes to our service. It takes CQN, the remote service, and knows, hey, the other side is no data service. So guess what it does? It translates it back to no data request, maybe in a different protocol
Yeah.
variant, like inbound V4, outbound V2.
Yes.
And the same happens when we do REST, and the same happens when we do GraphQL, and the same happens when we do databases. A database service is actually just a remote proxy for that thing called HANA, not living in your memory, in your process, but of course being that server. Or in case of SQLite, being a local proxy to the in-memory SQLite database, or a
Yeah.
remote proxy to your file. And this is always the same thing. What CUP does at the end of the day, it is at its core an event dispatcher machine. And next, integrating with more than the inner core is, hey, everything is just a CUP service. So all we need to do is translating something coming in into something going out. And what we did is in this query thing, and this may be a first look in the documentation today, where we have this comparison of query languages here. So this is CUP,
Hmm.
GraphQL, and OData and SQL. And why do we have most check marks here? Because we want to be the greatest, of course.
Of
No,
course.
the other thing is because we want to be able to translate from each to any.
Yes.
And this is only possible if you
If you're the superset.
exactly.
Fantastic. I can see a friend of the Cap family standing outside your office door virtually in the top right hand corner there. So maybe this is a perfect time. We've got 2 minutes to go. So maybe this is a perfect time to stop here. I'm already thinking, oh my goodness me, I'm going to have a great time writing the notes for this. I'm going to have to watch this about 7 times. So thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you to the people who are watching. The one question, which was sort of a question and also a sort of a comment, a remark as well from our lovely friend Helmut. It was about when you were modifying the REPL mechanisms on the fly with bindings and everything. And it was a comment about open source. And if it was open source, we could add things, missing things like this as well. That's a bit of a longer discussion. Even if we'd have spent 10 minutes on the questions, we wouldn't have resolved that.
But I like this one. And this is the best reason for open source, the one that
Yes,
you just mentioned.
yes, exactly,
This is
exactly.
what open source is about. And we will do.
Perfect. Perfect. What a great way to end. Daniel, thank you once again. Everybody, thanks so much for joining. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. And Daniel and I figure out whether we're going to do one, maybe the last one this year, next week. I don't know. But let's see. And I'll see you soon. Bye for now. It's bye from me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, sorry about this beginning thing.